strip mine crucibles and all this stuff, I know that's what I'm getting myself into, and that's kind of what we want to have living right there. So there's multiple kind of things that could show up on that list.
Okay.
And I'll just emphasize that it's all fresh, it's all new. We're still working on it and defining it. We welcome your feedback, and we're working with a lot of people to try and get that right.
I am going to take a break from our questions that we had down because chat has a lot of good questions about the bracket system, and so I want to pause here and answer some of those. So Kalaji writes, I feel like the 1-to-4 system will limit the reprints in future Commander products. How, Aaron, you kind of talked about...
Philip, you walked into me eating.
In terms of precons.
They're talking about the state of Commander
Obviously,
right
it's not set right now, but how are you thinking about precons and the buckets?
That's a good question. I can't say I've thought a ton about it. Like, again, we're 2 days into living in this universe.
So they're saying Armageddon would be on tier 4.
I'm pretty sure that
not a band
whatever
list,
ends
it
up
would
in
be tier 4.
the 4th band,
Will like that be like the highest tier? That's almost
putting in
CEDH.
precons. The Armageddons of the world.
I don't know.
Even the vampiric tutors. We try to limit tutors in our precons generally. But that does make me wonder, if we put a 3 in a precon, does that make that precon a 3? Is a single card sufficient to identifying what a dex power level is? Those are, maybe we need a little bit more robustness as part of that system as well. So
it sounds like they're not even. They're not sure yet.
So this is pretty hot off the presses.
Yep.
And as soon as you start poking holes in it, there's going to be places where I'm like, oh yeah, that's a good thought. We need to reevaluate that, and that's exactly one of those. Yep.
Related.
If you could poke this many holes into it right away, then maybe we shouldn't have announced it right away.
And its power level, but ubiquity in the format. Obviously, we don't have it figured out, but how do you two think about
Formalizing tiers is a pretty cool idea.
Yeah,
I don't think. I think it can work. I think it can work.
It has been in every precon we have made.
But then
there are so many awesome versions of it out there.
Like I said,
people identify.
Start poking holes pretty easily.
The loading screen for this very weekly MTG.
We'll wait and listen kind of to what they're saying.
Soul
I
Ring
just
is
feel
not
like
going
there's holes
anywhere.
to be poked
I
here.
would expect Soul Ring to be kind of, almost, if I can even use it, bracket 0, if that makes sense. It is just like such a foundational thing that everyone knows and loves. Yes, it is very powerful.
This is kind of a big deal though for
it would if it were any other card show up in a higher tier. But every commander
but it sounds like they have no
Soul Ring,
clue what's
because
going on.
That is part of the structure that's been created for this format. And I think a thing that's really been imbued in it by the community that we want to carry forward here. Soul Ring, yes, I expect that to show up.
It will be in bucket 1. I mean, we put it in every precon. We assume everyone's going to play it.
Wick,
I made
you're the one.
Soul Ring years ago. I get it. It's part of this format, and that's fine.
It's part of this
and fun.
It's
in
part of
many
this format.
cases.
Soul was Jewel
Polluted
Lotus.
Delta is one of the most powerful Magic cards ever printed. It'll be in bucket 1 as well. So it's not just going to be a raw power indicator. We're not bucketing cards just on like how powerful of a Magic card is this in a vacuum. What does this do to the format? What message do we want to send? How do we want to help people find games
How powerful is a card in a
that feel
vacuum?
appropriate to one another?
And
saying Soul Ring is
that's
anything
interesting.
other than like, yeah, this is just the thing you see every single time you sit down. So we can't
when you think about it, okay,
striate based on
let's think about that same thing.
Not useful.
A single card in a
One of the goals is
vacuum,
to get you
how
in games
powerful
with
is in a
people
vacuum?
with similarly
A
powerful
Dockside
decks to you.
Extortionist in a
Soul Ring
vacuum
is in essentially every commander
isn't
deck,
that powerful.
and so having it be at the lowest level is kind of an indicator of what kind of game you're
A
expecting to play.
Dockside
If you
Extortionist
put it
in a
4,
casual game
and every
where
deck
no one
for
else
somebody
has
in
any
that,
artifacts on
that
the
bracket,
board,
it's not really what we're intending.
not
to
that
do here.
powerful.
Yep.
So, yeah.
Makes sense.
Right. So if there's folks out there assuming the first thing we're going to do is ban Soul Ring, bad news.
Soul Ring isn't better than Mana Crypt, but it should be
Question / idea that I've seen a lot
the
that
zero
I'd love to
cost.
talk about is one that I actually sort of championed internally just because I'm a Canadian Highlander fan and I have to get at least one mention in every show, but is a
Never played Canadian
generalized
Highlander.
point system. So I'll be the Canlander expert for a moment. For those who don't know, Canlander works on a 10-point scale. You have 10 points to put in your deck. Most cards are worth 0 points, and then
Jared, they're kind of just
the highest
talking over
powered
the
cards
same
are where
4
they
things they
wear
talked about
from
yesterday, where they have like
1
the 4 tiers.
to, I think, 8
It sounds like they have
points
no
is the
clue
highest.
exactly what these tiers
But
mean.
you can only have 10 total points in your deck. Have you all thought at all about a point system?
Yeah, we've talked about it when we were exploring systems. I mean, of course, points is one that is naturally used by
it really
other
sounds
formats
like
like Canadian Highlander.
they were not ready for this.
And
Minis games use those.
Yeah,
Yes,
it just doesn't
all
feel
kinds
like
of
this
places
has
in
been
gaming
thought
use
out
them as well.
Yeah.
very well.
Points is a very nuanced
Gavin looks
thing,
very tired.
and is very hard when you get into places that are not competitive formats. So Canadian Highlander mostly played competitively. Many of these games that have point systems play competitively. Commander is more like what kind of play experience do you want? And if we give people a point structure, there'll be so much min-maxing on like,
I
agree.
I
I'll spend my points on
the
this
death
thing,
threats
get
were
this
ridiculous.
wild combo in my deck or what have you.
Terrible.
And then it also
should never have happened.
has so much gradation to it. Of like, oh, I'm a 25-point deck. Well, you're a 35-point deck.
But then make the announcement yesterday.
What does that
is fine.
actually
but
mean
then
for us
I
as we're
don't
trying
feel
to play
like
a
they
game?
needed.
It's not
I
particularly
think the
helpful
stream was
to
already
what kind of play
scheduled,
experience
and
you
it's not
have.
like they couldn't.
Because maybe my
talk
25
about
points
it.
are all from things that are 1 point, and your 25 points are
It's
from
just they're
three
in
incredibly
a
powerful
tough
cards
spot.
that are, whatever, 10 or so points apiece.
They were in a very tough spot.
That doesn't help us actually align on the kind of similar game to play.
And this
There are
plan
lessons
just
from it I
isn't
think we can take that are really
completely
useful.
thought out yet.
But I think some kind of like this power band is the level of which we are generally playing on, and I know I will not
I
just see
think,
cards from this higher level is a very important thing that brackets
Very
do
close
as
to
opposed
being
to
just
points.
a knee-jerk reaction.
What about combos? There are plenty of cards that on their own are not super powerful, but with another card win the game immediately or pretty close
Like
to it.
Dockside
how are you thinking about
Extortionist.
combos in this bracket system?
Yeah, I think
By
we
itself,
started talking
not
about
that
this
powerful.
recently, but I think combos very much do deserve space together
Just saying.
on this. I'll use one that is very
just
classic,
putting that
very
out
well
there.
known, Thassa's Oracle and Monarch Consultation, or Tainted Pact, or any number of cards. In isolation, those cards are not
Transparency
necessarily
is
a
good,
problem
though, I
on their
agree,
own,
yeah.
but together they would certainly be a
Hey,
four
Lord, how you
on
doing
this
over
list,
on
right?
Twitch?
It's a two-card combo that is very cheap that wins you the game. That is a thing many players generally do not want to play with in their commander experiences, but some do. It's important we give a place for that to live.
If an ad runs
and
here,
I think
I'm so
identifying some of those and putting them
don't-
on that list
I don't
somewhere is
subscribe
going to be
to,
important. Now, obviously,
them.
there are tons and tons and tons of combos in Magic. Not every single combo possible will be on this bracketing system, but some of the more iconic ones I imagine will make it on.
Another, in that same space about fine-tuning this bracket idea, has Brawl on Arena provided you all with any ideas on power levels? Yeah,
so one thing that Brawl does on Arena is it kind of buckets your deck into 4 different categories, which is actually, we worked on the brackets before I learned this, by the way, but it's a very fun thing to learn. And it seems to be working decently well for them, where it pairs you against people when you're playing Brawl that have a similar benchmark cards. I think there's a lot we can learn from that. Obviously, those discussions are fresh and ongoing. But
this is ongoing.
That was a cool thing to learn. They have a system that is similar and has worked pretty well for getting well match-made games there.
It's so easy to just have like a knee-jerk reaction to be like, wait. So if I have this one card in that deck, I'm then put into a different spot, even though the rest of the deck could be crap. But if I had this one card in that deck, it's now moved up a tier. It doesn't. Obviously, they need to. They got some work to do.
Just now, but of the power level of these cards over the past few years. For example, I would say that Jeweled Lotus was a mistake, like Arcane Signet or Smothering Tithe or cards in that vein. These are cards that we would not make with the heuristics we have today, knowing what we know about Commander. And in the past couple of years, I think we've been pretty good in general about the kind of shape we've been taking with things.
Jared, is that better?
The big philosophy that I've been really espousing to the team on the Commander side is one of the biggest dangers to Commander as a format is ubiquity.
Yeah.
You had to build a Commander deck. Okay, you're going to start with your Commander and Sol Ring. Of course, you have 98 cards left to build. Okay, but then we make Command Tower. Well, now your Commander deck's going to start with your Commander and Sol Ring and Command Tower. You have 97 cards left to build. Oh, now we've made Arcane Signet. Well, your deck starts with Command Tower, your Commander, Arcane Signet, and Sol Ring. Now you have 96 cards left to build. And if you imagine a future where this goes on, and suddenly there's 10 cards you have to put in every Commander deck, 15 cards you have to put in every Commander deck, it's a huge problem.
Yeah.
Because what makes Commander so great, part of what makes it so great, is that your deck is your way of expressing yourself and building something that is unique to you and feels special. And the more we degrade into that, the more trouble it causes. So on the design side, we're trying to do a lot of making cards that are good in specific archetypes, really good in certain strategies, and precons that point you in that direction, but not these cards that will show up in every single Commander deck that should be in their colors. I'm not going to say we're perfect, certainly, but we really want to try and push back against that as much as possible and have a ton of reviews going on internally to try and make sure that does not happen. So yeah, when it comes to a card, the cards that were banned on Monday, for example, those are cards that we are trying not to make, like Dockside Extortionist, Jeweled Lotus. Those are cards that we would not want to make today by today's standards. They kind of break some of our cardinal current Commander design rules on the team.
Yeah. Yeah, and Nadu, which you didn't bring up, is certainly not does not embody any design philosophy that would.
So they don't want to make cards like that. So will they reprint cards like that? Because they did that. We'll see.
There was never the intent there. But we can't unprint cards. You know, once they're made, they're made. The funny thing about design mistakes is that they go on to sometimes be the most popular cards in the game. Like cubes and legacy decks are just like piles of design mistakes in many ways. They're just like all of the most egregious things we've ever done. And then it's up to us to figure out, well, we can say, yep, that one wasn't great, but people seem to be enjoying it. We'll reprint it a few times. We'll put it in some other product, put it in whatever. And now it's just part of the fabric of the format. Or using Nadu as an example, it's like, this one's not going well. This is not adding to the fun of the format. We need to do something about this and then ban it. And those conversations are often very hard, you know, because there are people that will defend every single card out there. Like, no, it's actually fun to strip mine Crucible people. Learn to build a better deck, you know, if you don't want to get strip mine, whatever. You can take every one of these arguments in either direction, and finding that fine line, that's where we need the input, and that's going to be the hard work over time.
All right, we are almost to the end of our list of prepared questions. So if you do have a question that has not been answered yet or that you'd like us to dig deeper into, please do put it into chat. Again, tagging @Magic helps the people on my team find those questions. But we will be spending, so we've got about 25 minutes left in the stream. I've got three more questions quickly. They're relatively short, that I'm going to ask here, and then we're going to get to live questions. So if your question has not been answered, feel free to put it in, and we'll get to them. This next question, I'm actually going to take this one. We've seen a lot of questions about digital integration, and like, can we have tools for this? And obviously, again, very fresh. But when this came up, my team already started talking about this. So one of my teams is the web team that manages, among other things, our format pages. And we had already been talking about we need to refresh our format pages. And so when this bracket idea came up, the team immediately was like, wow, it'd be really cool if we had a tool on our commander page that was like, put your deck list here and we'll tell you what number it falls into. So yes, that is something we've already started discussing now. Digital tool implementation takes time. But I think a lot of us are very excited about the possibilities there. Next question, hopefully a quick one for you, Gavin. What about the Silver Border project? And this was a rules committee project that they were working on but hadn't rolled out yet. Is that going to be canceled? Do you have any inklings on that yet?
Yeah, I think it's a cool project because a lot of players do enjoy playing with Silver Border cards. Not everyone wants them in their game, but having that discussion and figuring out the details around that is still going to be important. It is, I'll be candid, it is not as important as a lot of the other stuff we're trying to figure out right now involving how this is all going to move going forward. But at some point in the future, I do think it's a thing we'll resume and take a look at. I think it's a great project to work on with the community group as well. I know that many people on the RC and CAG currently have been working on this, and we can hopefully take the seeds that they've planted and in this new group all work together to make something great here in time. I wouldn't expect anything soon, but it is something I want to continue forward.
All right. And then lastly, what is your timeline on everything? What are you aiming for? You know, we've got MagicCon Las Vegas coming up. I know a lot of people see us take this over and they're like,
so mad
okay, now what's going to happen? What is your timeline on all of this?
Why is he
yeah,
so
well, I
mad?
mean, as we've emphasized a number of times, this is all happening quick, right? It's all fresh. We're also figuring out exactly when things are going to occur. The goal I would like to shoot for is having something with the power brackets ready to go by MagicCon Las Vegas. So we can have an article up, something up the point in that direction, and we can kind of try it out there. Maybe we can get some fun little things made for the tables so you can indicate what power bracket you're in. But I don't want to promise anything, right? The important thing to me is we take the time to do this right. Commander is an important format to a lot of people, myself included, and I would rather take the time to do something correct than rush it out before it's ready.
Go ahead. My first goal is to get the committee identified and read in and start those conversations because I don't want to make too many other decisions.
There's no way
without
they're going to
them.
bracket this
I'm
by
not gonna
20.
ban,
By the
unban,
25th or 26th
whatever,
for
change rules.
Las Vegas Con. There's no way that's happening.
Without that committee existing.
get the committee first.
If people
Aaron's
want
right.
some sort of immediate action, it's not prudent. It really isn't. We need a lot of introspection here, a lot of input, and we don't want to do anything crazy or knee-jerk or anything like that. I believe those conversations will be happening this week, starting to identify people, reach out to them, and then let Gavin, run his first meeting or whatever that's even going to look like. I have no idea.
Yeah, and I'll echo that entirely. Once again, the community focus here is critical to us. So before figuring anything out in earnest, having that touch point created is really, really, really important. And I literally have meetings about this later today. So we'll be working on it fast.
I appreciate you coming on the show first. Okay, with our last 20 minutes, I'm just going to start running through questions.
The only way you
These
make
are
a
not
bracket
questions we
system
prepared
work
for,
is if you have
the answer to
if
a
they
lot of them,
make
maybe
something
we're going to
in their
figure that
app
out.
or
But
on the website that
so,
tells
for
you
example,
what
our
power
first
level your
question
deck is.
from
That's the
Noodle
only way to
Penguin:
make it
how
work.
big do you guys envision the new team directly in charge of Commander will be?
Right. So when it comes to this community focus group, which is I think what they're talking about here, we're still figuring out exactly how big we want it to be.
Huge.
We're looking at something in the range of between 10 and 20, but unclear how it's going to look at this time.
Imagine
so there's
trying
a
to
lot
get
of
10
different
to 20
factors taken
people
into
to agree
account
on
there. So
anything.
it could end up larger, could end up smaller. That's TBD based on a number of things, I would say. And then in terms of design's impact, so I help head up the Commander design team, and in that group there's probably about 12, maybe 10 Commander designers, and they'll also, of course, be working on this to some degree as well. So both Wizards and the community collaborating together.
Okay. I got a couple questions in this same space, so I'll ask the shorter one. Will this new community-focused panel to help guide Commander include any members of the CEDH community?
Yeah, and I mentioned this earlier, but it is actually really important to me that we have at least one person who knows the format and can speak to that on there to be a voice for that community.
There should be
The
multiple
focus of
people from
Commander from a
CEDH
design
there in this thing.
perspective is the kind of more traditional casual social Commander, but I don't want to downplay the fact that CDH is a community that has a very excited audience and a lot of people very active in the game who are passionate about it, and make sure they have a seat at the table is critical.
Yep.
Right. Designing cards and products, we're aiming at the middle, but rules and floor rules and ban lists have to account for the extremes.
How many pros need to be on this list?
Absolutely. I think it'd be great to hear from those folks on these matters.
Cool. All right, from 2023 Mod 3UZ, the old RC was very American-based. How will you work on making it less so, and how will you ensure that Europe, Asia, and so on get a voice as well?
So when I was helping put together the Pauper format panel, something that was really critical to me is that we got a widespread from across many different areas. It's too early to tell what it's going to look like what the exact mix is going to look like here for this new community-focused panel. But making sure we have a spread of people that can provide feedback, I think is critical to making sure that it all runs smoothly, because we want to be able to hear from many different regions as to what is happening in their area, right? Both around the US, around North America, places like Europe, and so on. I can't guarantee it's going to look exactly the same in terms of the percentages of the mix, but getting representation in there from many different places, I think will do us a lot of good.
Okay. Next question. I saw this almost immediately when we talked about the bracket system. Would you consider a fifth bracket for CEDH?
We are certainly not tied to the number 4.
Okay.
We tried doing
That's
it with
good to
3, and it did not feel like enough. But we could potentially talk
So
about
you're gonna
doing
go
more.
5.
I'd like to start with 4
4 or
and see
5.
how it all turns out. But
But
this
we
is
didn't
pretty
like
fresh
10.
and new. So as we begin doing the exercise, if it feels like we need a 5th one,
10 and
we
9,
can do it. I'll say
CEDH.
personally, for me, I often enjoy scales that don't have a midpoint because it forces you to kind of pick a side on where you want to fall.
Oh, boy.
But that is certainly not a heuristic we're going to hold to by any stretch.
I don't.
Okay. We'll go with Aaron on this one. Will there be a plan to print how-to guides explaining the bracket system in products like precons?
That's interesting. At the very least, we can put QR codes or URLs in there to make sure, have questions about how to tune your deck, go here. I do think ultimately, whether it's in our companion app or on our website, like, information being on people's phones is the best place for it, as opposed to pieces of paper that are in products. But at the same time, yes, the product should acknowledge that this exists and talk about it and let people know where to go. So that's a good thing. That pathing will be important to build in for sure.
And I agree. I totally agree with that. And I think that it will take some time to get there, right? First, you want to flesh this out, figure out how it looks, put it through its paces, make sure it is actually accomplishing its goals. And then at that point, I think, putting it into products on the inserts and so on will be great.
All right. Given safety concerns after this recent announcement, would we have the Commander Advisory Committee or whatever we end up calling it, would we make them anonymous? Would we make them public figures? Would we give them a choice?
Still discussions happening about that. One thing I think is important is I don't want to seem like there's some shadowy cabal of people that are on this group that are all making the calls. So I think having some faces there is really important. Whether or not they all have to be public facing, exactly the framework that takes is still something we're talking about. And I will call out that with this group, this is one of the many ways we'll take feedback in. But if someone is not on this group, it doesn't mean we're going to ignore what they have to say or not talk with them, right? There's a lot of folks in the community that I reach out to, that the RC has reached out to in the past to talk about all kinds of things who are not on the CAG or involved in that circle. So we will be interfacing tons with the community in all kinds of fashions. This is one arm of that. So like I said, exactly the shape is still ongoing.
Yeah, I think it's good for us if there are people on this committee that are very public about it and saying, hey, I'm on this committee.
100%.
If you have an axe to grind, come to my Discord or hit me up on social media, because we want them to be synthesizing, information from the community as a whole, and if they're not in a position to actively solicit it, then it gets more difficult.
I want to pause it here. There has to be people that people can know, because if you don't put names attached to this, people are going to assume that it's just Wizards of the Coast and Hasbro people that are going, well, how much money can we make? Depending on bands and what tiers things are in. So you have to have people that are comfortable with it being public.
No means our intent to ever, expose anyone to anything.
With the understanding that there's some people that suck out there and that will, threaten people, and those people suck, and we need to kick them out of we need to just kick them out of Magic to begin with.
Talk a little bit more about the complications around combos on the list. One of the comments I saw a lot was, sure, we can talk about Thassa's Oracle Demonic Consultation, but Magic is just full of game-winning combos. Are we going to list them all? Are we going to talk about them philosophically?
Yeah, so one thing, once again, super early conversations about this stuff, but one thing we've been talking a lot about is if with combos, they should be more philosophical in nature. For example, Bracket 4 is the most efficient combos, your 2 and 3 mana, 2-card combos that will win you the game. Bracket 3 is stuff that's a little harder to pull out, that's a little more mana intensive, like Sanguine Bond and Exquisite Blood, right? It's a 2-card combo to win you the game. They both cost about 5 mana. And then Bracket 2 is like probably no infinite combos, or maybe like 4 to 5 infinite combos are acceptable. But it's too early to know exactly how that's all going to shake out on this list. But I think it's very plausible that a more philosophical approach could help catch some of that stuff. And one thing I want to do with many of the cards that are on the list is talk about why they're there and what that means, right? The fact that this card sits here, or this combo sits here, might be like, we're not looking to have stuff at about this this range here. For example, tutors, we saw Vampire Tutor on the screen earlier. Instant speed efficient tutors that are at that level will likely end up in Bracket 4 for the most part, right? 1 mana tutors, I would expect that Vampire Tutor and probably Enlightened and Mystical are likely candidates for 4, and so you could easily break down tutors in a similar fashion.
Yeah, all the tutors
that
are
can be
going
how
to
it's
be
going to all play out.
Okay. Aaron,
this
when
version of
you
CEDH.
think about the brackets, do you envision them being
Nippo, it's on Magic
strictly
Gathering
lists
Twitch
of
channel.
cards or sort of philosophical
Or you should be able
definitions
to go
of
widescreen
what
here if
play
you'd like.
looks like
Up to you.
there?
I don't think in the middle and at the bottom we can make lists.
Alex, yeah, I think
We
so,
would have to
depending on
account
what
for
kind
every
of
single card
tier
in
you
the
want to be
game,
in, I guess.
or every single card anyone's willing to consider playing in a commander deck. The top, I am more hopeful that we can be a little more concrete about. Even that might require some finesse, and is this card really that bad? Or especially when we get into combos, it's like your Staff of Domination, really a 4? Depends. Do you have, Karametra's Acolyte in your deck or whatever? Pick whatever ways you plan on abusing that card, because by itself,
To a
you
degree,
pay
Laura.
5 and tap and draw a card or whatever it is. Who cares? But
Yeah.
there are insidious things afoot a lot of the times with some of those cards, and we will not be able to capture them all. To the point about combos, we cannot. I don't think we should be putting cards in brackets based on their worst case scenario necessarily all the time, especially when they have fair uses that people enjoy.
Exactly.
So yeah,
That's a really good point.
I don't expect the middle to be much more than guidance.
Alex, if you're just playing kitchen table
and
Magic,
talking
you
about
don't-
the
you don't need to worry
experience
about
these
it at all,
cards
man.
generate and the
Play with your
speed
buddies.
and whatnot. The top,
Communicate
you know,
with your pod.
I would like to try to be pretty clear. And the more clear we can be there, the better. But we'll see how that goes. Again, I don't want it to be 900 cards long or whatever. I think then it will become more bureaucratic than fun and not be that useful. So we'll see.
And yeah, and once again, it is all directional, right? That communication with your table. Staff of Domination is a great example. If you're like, I have Staff of Domination and this other card that could theoretically go infinite in my deck, that's a great conversation to have when you sit down about what the kind of play experience you might expect.
Yep. For those who, we've referred to the Pauper Advisory, I always forget what it's called, Pauper Advisory Group a number of times. For those who don't know, how does that group work?
Yeah, so the Pauper Format panel is a group of folks I work with on the Pauper format. And the way that group is set up, and I'm not going to say this one's going to be exactly the same. I think that there'll be a lot of reasons why I want to take things a little bit differently. But the way it's set up is all of us talk throughout the week, basically every week, about what's happening in the format, what trends people are seeing, what things like Magic Online leagues and challenges are looking like. We'll get data in from Daybreak Games and Magic Online that we'll pour over. When the community has a big outcry about something, we'll talk about if we want to take action there. When it comes time to actually take action, we'll all work on the kind of announcement together and how we want to communicate that out to the public. And yeah, we also talk a lot about just philosophy, right? What are the things in the format we want to hold close to our chest as important? What are the things we're willing to see shift over time? And overall, I mean, I felt like it's been a really great experience with that group. It's a group of very smart people from around the world that are all eager to dig into this. And it's been very positive, and I think that the way we've communicated with the public in a very transparent way has been really successful. And I've heard from you guys all the time that you appreciate the kind of depth we go into in these discussions. And with whatever we do with Commander, I would expect something similar in the amount of communication we want to do with you all. Because especially as a community format, having that discourse and discussion with all of you, and even broadcasting changes we're thinking about in advance, is a thing we want to make sure that we do.
Yep.
Yeah, that panel was basically an admission on our end that we don't have the expertise in the building, right? We don't design for that format. We don't have people that have spent hundreds of hours playing it. And in order to make the right decisions for how to manage it, we needed other input. We do have those people in the building for Commander. We do have people that spend all day, every day thinking about it and playing it. But for us, this using the community, wanting to engage the community in Commander is an admission that the problem is just so enormous. No number of employees spending their time engaging with the format is going to get us a read on how the rest of the world is engaging with it. So we need more than we can provide ourselves.
Oh, that's a good point.
You mentioned getting feedback, so obviously there will be people who are on
there's going to be so many people that do not.
But if you're someone out in the world, what are the best ways to provide feedback?
Yeah, well, Discord, we have a new Discord set up that I know there's already been a lot of chatter in, so that's wonderful for this.
There is a new Discord.
If you want to tweet at me or X at me or whatever we say these days, you can do so online. I'm available on all kinds of social media networks. And also, I just frankly read a lot. Reddit is one of the most visited websites on my phone, so I'm always reading the Magic Reddit. I'm always checking social media. When articles go up, I read those. So whatever way you have to communicate with us, whether it's, and I'm sure I will be reading the Discord some. I know it is moving very fast right now, so I can't process all of it. But I'm sure Blake and his team will be sending over a lot of the top, most popular questions and notes. So we'll be synthesizing all of this in the days and weeks to come. And to me, part of the great thing about having the community group too is it's not just me doing it, or the design team doing it. We'll all be hearing things from the community together, right? And I see this all the time where different people hear different things or read different articles and we can share about it. One of the great things about the Popper group is people will share, oh, did you see this article that came out this week or this tweet thread? And often I'll have missed it because I was busy that day or what have you. And all being able to see it and talk about it is great. And I think the community group being someone to pick up on all the different threads that are out there in the world will be really, really wonderful for us.
I don't think they've said anything too crazy.
Speaking of which, we are nearly out of time. I will plug the Discord. It's the official Magic Discord. There's a link to it in the article from yesterday. Not only is there a main channel to talk about the Commander announcement, but the team broke it up into a bunch of sub-channels. So if you particularly want to talk about the brackets, if you particularly want to talk about the bans, if you want to talk about any number of topics, there are sub-threads for those, and they're all very active right now.
That will not be happening.
So I definitely recommend checking those out. There are definitely more great questions in chat that we did not get to. Share them in all the ways that Gavin talked. Head to Discord, share them with him. You can share them with me. I'll make sure they get to the right place. Aaron is pretty active on Twitter as well. And so we are open and we are eager to hear about your thoughts. So thank you for tuning in. Next week's show is a smorgasbord of things. There's a bunch of cool announcements. So we'll talk about next week's show when we get there. But in the meantime, we want to hear more about your thoughts on Commander, on the bracket system, and on moving forward. So thank you for tuning in, and we'll see you next week.
Okay. All of that to kind of say a whole lot of nothing. I think is probably the main thing we got. The most main thing we got out of all of that. They're not ready. Obviously, this is not this is not finalized. They have not figured out anything to finalize yet. So there's a long way to go with this. Is what I got from that. They're gonna make 4 tier list. They're still working on making wherever those are gonna go. And what those tiers look like, and they're working on separating those tiers for Magic moving forward. I think this is going to be this is a very, very tough job for them that they have right now, and they're gonna go out and get some community members. He said 10 to 20 people, and they asked a really good question, like, since the threats came in, is there going to be communication over? Is there going to be communication over over the people that are in this group that make up these decisions, and are those people going to have their names out there? As much as it shouldn't happen, we shouldn't have to worry about people worried for their safety. It is important that those names, in my opinion, are available, because if there's no transparency there to know who is in charge of these tier lists or future bannings or unbannings potentially, you're going to have more of a community outcry. You're also going to have more people that are pointing the finger at Wizards of the Coast, Magic the Gathering, whatever, and saying they're doing this for the money. It's very, very important that they make this look like it's not for the money. So, I don't know. I all of that was kind of to say nothing, rather than just being transparent and talking about how they're not quite ready for it. So, I don't know. Maybe in the future, it'll get better. That was not a terrible way to start it out and communicate with everyone. So, I mean, I'm glad they did it. It didn't give us a whole lot of information, but it was a good thing that they did. Glad they did it. Lord Hal, I think this stream was scheduled. I think they always like to stick to their schedules. I guess I don't know. I don't know that 100% for sure though. But they probably should have waited. Probably should have waited. Okay. All right, y'all. We're going to call it. Have a good time. Have a good day. Be kind to each other. Thanks for the follows, likes, all that stuff. Just wanted to get on here really quick. I was a little late to the party on this, but wanted to jump in as soon as we could. All right, y'all. Love you 3,000.